Welcome back to Hold That Thought.
We're your hosts, Becca
and Taylor.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, sweet little sick girl.
I'm a sick girl if you can't tell from the nasal quality ringing for your headphones.
It's not too bad.
It's not too bad? Okay, good.
On my end.
That makes me feel good. The weekend was filled with lots of couch time and Sudafed and watching Industry and playing Rummy Cube.
What do you like about Industry?
Well, you're hearing me talk about Industry as if I've always watched it. I literally jumped in on season 4, and I like it because I think the acting's really good and the script is actually incredible. I hate
Season 4. Good God, girl.
I tried season 1 and I couldn't get into it at all.
Wow.
It was too dark. And also all of the characters are pretty unlikable for the most part.
Were you swindled into watching it because Luis wanted to when he was sick?
Totally. Yeah.
You just said yeah, season 4.
I was so out of it. And I was like, just fine. And then I actually really loved it.
Wow. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It was good.
There's a lesson in that.
There's the power of going with the flow.
Right.
You never know what you're going to find behind the river bend. And then you ended up making Super Bowl day really special with some of our other
we had
friends,
a really
so thank you so much.
A fun group. We T and Luis were going to be hosting anyway, and they were both on the up and up, it seemed, of sickness. T is now back in the trenches a little, but they sat on their bay window and all the windows cracked while the rest of us sat on the couch, socially distanced in a way. Let's talk about the Super Bowl.
No,
halftime performance.
There's only one thing to talk about, and it's Benito.
It's Benito.
It was so powerful.
It was amazing.
The thing that I've been remarking on or thinking about today is just how obviously we're living in a time that feels really scary. Like the moral foundation of our country is in question.
Yeah. And obviously it always was. And it's just at the surface now for all of us. Exactly. And that feels extra scary because like everything you grew up, at least as like a privileged white person, being told you could trust in terms of systems, in terms of like the infrastructure of this country is all, it's like
at risk
a facade.
Yeah,
it's
been
pulled
all
back
a
the
facade.
curtain.
Yeah, absolutely. And to see that we live in a country where that sort of celebration and joy and love of diversity and of a culture that has in the past X amount of months been really threatened in this country is really powerful, and also just kept making me think like, wow, we live in a country of such hypocrisy and like genuinely hypocrisy, and also it has felt for so many weeks that hate is winning, and that halftime performance was like, oh wait, love is actually prevail. Like most people want to sing and dance with Bad Bunny in Spanish and celebrate every single flag in South and Central America and North America and including Canada. And that is the prevailing, that's the majority in this country. It has felt like that hasn't been the prevailing winning force in the past few months, and it's still here.
Yeah. I saw someone say today on social media, like, it was so refreshing because to have not felt a sense of patriotism for a long time, it's almost like we want to hitch our wagon to something even more important than patriotism, which is like inclusion on a broader scale or like internationalism.
Yeah. And well, it was brilliant what Bad Bunny did with Together We Are America. Just brilliant of basically turning it all on Trump's head and the rhetoric that has been spewed everywhere.
Right. My dad today goes, I loved how much Trump hated it.
I know.
I love how bothered he was by it.
He's so predictable. He's such a
so
child.
petulant in like such an insane way.
Yeah.
Bad Bunny, Benito, leyenda total.
Yep. Total.
Drop the mic. It was insane how he literally fell backwards off that roof.
Trust fall. It's symbolic.
Yeah.
Did we get everything we wanted on Benito? Also, okay, one other thing I wanted to say, anyone who's criticizing Bad Bunny, at the end of the day, you're depriving yourself of such joy.
I know.
Imagine just not loving what we just saw.
No, it's so sad.
So sad. What are we talking about today, Beck?
We're talking about internal family systems, which is sometimes shortened to IFS. As a reminder, this is our 4th episode.
5th episode.
It's our fifth episode of our mini series, Building a Home in Your Mind, which is intended to do what, T?
It's intended to help us explore all the little thoughts and feelings and emotions that are always keeping us company up in our heads all day long. And so we thought, what better way to wrap this mini series up than IFS, which we'll get into shortly, is kind of all about the people in our head.
Yeah. Let's start with a roadmap of where we're going with this episode, just so you can kind of get the handholds.
Yep.
and then we'll jump into the actual like content of it. But first of all, we're going to start with like brief definition of IFS so that you can understand the basics. We'll talk a bit about the history.
The father of IFS.
The father, the son, the Holy Ghost. Then we'll get into like the nitty gritty of each quote unquote part. Then we'll talk about the neuroscience behind it, like what it is operating upon, why there's a need for IFS at all, I guess is the best way to say it. And we'll close out with
a little surprise.
A little surprise.
Okay. Internal family systems, or IFS, is a model in psychotherapy for understanding ourselves. And in it, it says that every human being is made up of protective parts, or what some people call subpersonalities, that are led by a core self. You can think of us as being these little ecologies.
I love that word. Yeah.
We'll get more into that. With
ecosystems,
yep. With parts that are designed to or want to play a valuable role within each of us.
I think it's worth saying that it sounds, at least when I first heard it, I was like, internal family systems, how my nuclear family interacts, like the systems within that. No, it's about inside each individual, inside your brain.
Yes, these subpersonalities that make up your brain.
Yeah.
Interesting you bring that up, though, Beck, because the founder of IFS was a man named Richard Schwartz. He's currently a teaching associate in psychiatry at Cambridge Health Alliance, which is a Harvard Medical School affiliate. But he was practicing as a family therapist when he started to articulate and think about IFS. So
let's just say, God bless family therapists. That work is hard.
Well, I didn't realize this, but Schwartz was working in a psychiatric ward in the 70s, and the predominant kind of model of therapy was psychoanalysis. And literally families weren't spoken to. Like families were not considered a crucial part of understanding. And obviously that has now shifted, thank God. Yeah. But family therapy came from this faction of psychoanalysts who were like, this is crazy that we're claiming
not
people.
Talking about the context.
Yeah, exactly. That we would think people could heal without the context of the family and all of these other things. So what you said about it being confusing, that, you know, IFS family systems, I think there is something to that, because Richard Schwartz basically came to this realization that a lot of what he was noticing, or the tactics that he was implementing in his family therapy, could be applied to a person within their own self and be super, super effective.
Right. Talk about the moment he realized that.
Well, the moment that I found interesting, and you let me know if there was another one that you were excited about, but when he was practicing as a family therapist at the age of 32, so he was young, he found that when he asked his clients to locate their emotional reaction, let's say a client presented with a lot of anger, and he asked that client to locate that anger in their body and get curious about it. Why were they feeling angry? Where was it coming from? Where were they feeling it in their body?
Right.
The patients could actually speak to the anger, and the anger could speak back.
Oh, I could personify it.
Yes, exactly. And in this dialogue that patients could start to have with these emotions that they were feeling, a lot of reasoning was coming up behind it. Other sub emotions, like this anger was speaking about this real fear that was behind it, or this, you know, self-criticism that was fueling it. And there was this whole patchwork of real depth and wealth that came from a client speaking to and then listening to an emotion or a feeling. And so it inspired him to delve deeper into what this getting close and listening to parts of the mind could be. And he began, quote unquote, conceiving of the mind as an inner family. And he began experimenting with the techniques that he had used as a family therapist. I want to flag that I think it's interesting. The concept of multiplicity, or like having multiple parts, sounds scary. Yeah. It's been pathologized in our psychology and in our understanding of the human brain.
Right. You associate that with a diagnosis of personality disorders or schizophrenia or
dissociative identity disorder, like things like that. We're obviously not talking about that. But I think what Schwartz did in a really powerful way was brought into the mainstream the extent that recognizing subpersonalities is actually really important to understanding how the brain and mind just work as is.
God, it's so amazing to grow up in a time where obviously we at times overanalyze ourselves because we have so much data to pull on. We have so much access to information now.
Yeah.
And I think if I were a kid growing up in like the 50s or obviously earlier, God, imagine you're having these like different conflicting feelings in your head. You're feeling your parts. And it's so much less socially sanctioned at that time to articulate that to people around you. And like it really is a privilege to be growing up in a time where you can understand yourself. At least I'll speak for myself. I have the tools to understand myself. And it's socially accepted and, at least in my circle, encouraged to look within in that way and like understand these parts. It's not taboo. It's not frowned upon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have language for it, which is huge for understanding the self.
Yeah, and that there are all these models that can be layered one on top of the other, and you get to pick which ones suit you and which ones are helping you better understand yourself. Like, I think that's so exciting too. Like, I can hear listeners maybe being like, I don't think that would help me, but like IFS has been so helpful for me to start to understand myself. We're growing up in a world where the menu of models is so vast that it's kind of like a choose your own adventure of what feels right.
You've said that in multiple episodes, and I think it's really helpful to me that you keep repeating the like, choose what works for you, discard the rest. Like when we were talking about diagnoses, like if it's going to help you to have a label, take it. If not, leave it. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to say that the concept of parts was not new to internal family system, right? Like there were other paradigms that conceptualized the self and parts before. Like obviously the most famous, I think, original would be Freud. But this was the first one that...
Wait, sorry. That's like the ego, the id, the super ego.
Yes.
And that's Freudian?
And that was Freud, yes.
Okay.
But what IFS did differently was really thinking about how each of these subpersonalities are really impacted by and work within other subpersonalities. It is really this concept of the ecosystem that was really pretty new with IFS. And I think is pretty powerful. And Schwartz was actually inspired in the 1970s by the environmental movement.
What? That's
sick. It was in 1973 he was first starting to do his work and studies in psychology at undergrad. And it was in 1973 was the kind of the birth of the environmental movement and the concept of ecologies and ecosystems. And all of that was part of what went into his thinking around first family therapy and then internal family systems, which is so cool.
I also think the like non-pathologizing component of IFS is pretty critical to it.
Yes. And that's what we're saying is that it was recognizing that these layered parts or personalities is normal and healthy. It's just how the brain and mind are supposed to work. It's not that there's something wrong with us.
He doesn't want you to delete the parts. He doesn't want you to like dissolve them. He wants you to like bring them in for a hug.
Such a great question. So essentially the concept is there are no bad parts.
Right. No bad parts. There's actually a book called that. About parts work.
We'll link it in the show notes. So essentially the concept is that all of these parts, these subpersonalities, they're make up your ecosystem. They have a role. They are trying to be helpful.
It actually might be disordered if you don't have any of some of them.
And they're pushed into extreme states as a mechanism of protection or as a response to different experiences that you have throughout your life, which Beck will get into when we talk a little bit more about the neuroscience. But this concept is that these parts are not disordered or wrong. They're just having an adaptive response that then ultimately become essentially maladaptive when they're out of alignment.
Exactly.
So the healing element is about approaching all of them, understanding why they're acting the way they're acting, and bringing them into more alignment with this so that they can act in harmony with each other. So it's not about deleting anything or getting rid of anything. It's about understanding and welcoming.
The goal of IFS is to help parts trust the capital S self, which like exists in the center of all of these different parts, and release their roles through a process of quote unquote unburdening. That's what they call it in the theory, which leads to internal harmony. So internal harmony and cohesion is really what Schwartz is looking to as the goal.
Nice. And he talks about, how when you reach that, you achieve the 8 C's, which he articulates as being calmness, curiosity, clarity, compassion, confidence, creativity, courage, and connectedness. So when you work with your parts, each of these parts, and start to help understand where they're coming from and what purpose they're trying to hold and bring them into that harmony that you were just saying, that's when you can really achieve those 8 C's of being. Research shows that IFS is particularly effective across generalized anxiety disorder, depression, substance abuse, and eating disorders.
I remember seeing somewhere on the IFS site that part of the impetus for the creation of this model was, as you said, Dr. Schwartz was working in a clinical setting with families for family therapy. And sometimes he would have family members leave the session, which I would also do when I was working with couples. That's advised when you're learning these modalities. If you have multiple people in a clinical setting, you usually, if they're working together, like a couple, like a family, you do have moments where you meet with individuals.
Wait, so you ask them to leave the room and then they come back?
They come back after you've had time to talk to an individual.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And for Schwartz, he said he would have family members leave and work one-on-one with, say, one of the children in the family, or maybe it was the mother or whatever. And in those individual settings, he said that the person would show up differently, that like something would shift and they could kind of see the capital S self in front of him. Yeah. Or the person could identify that they felt like their capital S self, but then in the context of their family, they felt different. And so this was part of what prompted him to create the model, because he took that on an internal scale and said, okay, what happens when you take certain family members, quote unquote, in our brains out of circulation, or when you tone them down, like you're turning the volume down a little bit.
Yep. Interesting. So that gets us to what are we've mentioned the self a few times, and we've mentioned these subpersonalities. Elucidate a little bit more what parts or patterns of parts Schwartz was finding and are really now considered the typical parts referred to in IFS.
Yeah. Okay, there are three main parts.
Yep.
At the center of it all is the self, capital S.
Yeah. And this is kind of like that core central part of yourself that is your most healthy, confident,
your
core.
Quote unquote truest self, maybe.
Your core, yeah.
Yeah, your core. Okay, so we have managers, firefighters, and exiles. Starting with managers. Managers are protective parts that are there to prevent pain and maintain control. Control is a big thing here. And kind of manage your life.
For example, I think one of my key managers is my self-critic.
Yeah, it's often critics.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
So these three parts that you just named are really categories, and then someone can find more specific names of those subpersonalities within.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, cool.
I thought it was helpful the way that Schwartz described it. Our managers are often our critics, and they're criticizing us in an effort to make us behave. Like, it's helpful to remind ourselves that these were once adaptive parts. They now are maybe hurting us or hindering us more so than they're helping us, but they serve a purpose. They're there for a reason. Be helping us. Yeah. And they're doing their job, and it makes them feel good to do their job.
Yeah.
So the managers are criticizing us in an effort to make us behave, to conform, to be a part of the group, quote unquote. That's evolutionarily indicated. Or they make us feel bad enough that we never take another risk. And that's to stop us from getting hurt.
Yeah. And that dovetails a little bit into the exiles.
Yeah. So managers are trying to preempt anything that might trigger the exiles, and they want to control inner and external environments as much as they are able to. Does that align with what you were seeing in the research?
Yeah. So like exiles are any parts that have come from an experience where you've been hurt before, humiliated, have been really afraid, and managers are keeping these experiences locked away.
Right.
So this is a very overly simplified example, but let's say, to your point, you once got on a stage, you took a risk, got on a stage and failed at a school play. Your manager is going to make sure that you never do something that puts yourself out there again. And that's going to be your exile part, locked in a closet and getting up on the stage again. Maybe we go firefighters and then we circle back to exiles.
Yeah, great. I think it's also helpful to think of it in terms of both managers and firefighters are trying to prevent the expression of the exiles. Despite the manager's defenses, the world still triggers exiles.
Right.
Like, you will still be put in a position where you have to go up on stage, for example.
Yep.
So that creates an internal emergency for the firefighters, and they are looking to jump in and get you out of that situation right now, immediately. And they don't care if there's collateral damage. They just want to get you higher than the flames or get you out of your body, which I think was a really helpful way to think about this, and let the flames burn themselves out. Another way that he defines them is like reactive parts that activate to distract or numb the system from pain. So like you said, addiction, avoidance is a firefighter.
I feel like anger could also be a firefighter. I'm thinking of firefighters as anything that's like quick to protect and jump into action, like temper, anger.
Oh, interesting.
Defensiveness.
Dissociation.
Yeah.
Right. They activate instantly when they sense activation of the trauma, of the deeper pain and shame that are held by the exiles.
Yeah. Is the basis of exile kind of this shame, this fear-based, shame-based feelings?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a good definition. I think exiles are the parts of us that are wounded and they're holding the trauma and the fear and the shame.
Yeah.
And when I picture my exiles, I get like the language really gives me a visceral sensation of being like, oh, I want to touch that part and well, I want to touch you. My exiles are like, no, thank you.
My exiles are like, I have boundaries.
Yeah, I'd be so proud. But that also brings up my therapist. Shout out Kirsten. She also adds, when we do parts work, she adds the inner child, which obviously all of these are related to the inner child, but she does isolate that.
Interesting.
And when we're working together, sometimes I'll say something and she'll be like we won't be actively doing parts work, quote unquote, but she'll be like, oh, that sounded like a manager. Or like, ooh, was that a firefighter? And then we'll kind of dig into that and see like, okay, where did that come from? And she'll be like, what does your inner child feel when you say that? Or
so question for you there. So we talked about the self, we talked about the firefighter, manager, exiles, and you bring up inner child. How do you feel, or how do you conceptualize inner child in relation to self?
I think the inner child, I wouldn't want to be only my quote unquote inner child at this stage in life. Right. I think there's something euphoric about tapping into that. Maybe more pure is a good way to say it. Like that pure version of myself that was less encumbered or less affected, with an A, affected by the world. And I think it wouldn't serve me at this time in my life to just be my inner child. I want to be my full self that has learned from the traumas, the shame. All of these, like we've said before, serve a purpose. I do need managers. I do need firefighters. I'm keeping all of them on the payroll, but I'm turning down their volumes at different times when they get pretty loud and when their reactions are outsized. I think it's really about right sizing. Because everyone's childhood, I think we can say this kind of as a blanket statement, creates exiles, managers, or firefighters that are bigger than their britches. Like, they need to be like toned down.
Well, and that's a few things you said there. One is that I think so often when in parts work, and Schwartz himself talks about this, our parts are locked back in time when we were a child and we were out of control and we couldn't, we couldn't take care of ourselves. And so they're trying to take care of us. Now, as adults, our self, capital T, capital S, can take care of us fully. But your inner child is not an adult. Your inner child is very vulnerable and pure, to your point, but can't take care of yourself. So the self is the thing that you can say, oh, wait, I got you.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that my therapist will talk about with me a lot, and what I also learned in school / in my like practicum internship, was that the parts will not stop working unless you show them that it is being taken care of
by the self. Yeah. So interesting.
Like, they're like, why would I ever abandon my post when I know it's going to fall through the ground? Like, this will go up in flames, the firefighters say.
I think what you just said a little bit ago of like the exiles, the word exile makes you want to just like,
I just thought, give it a warmie. They need warmies.
No, these things need warmies. Sidebar.
Can we do it? Can we do a tangent so they know?
Major sidebar. Our friend Claire
Bear
has recently gotten everyone she knows and loves a stuffed animal called a warmie.
Not everyone.
if you're lucky.
If you're a lucky duck.
Recently, it was both of me and Becky's birthdays, and we both got a warmie.
Can you explain what a warmie is?
A warmie is the most magical stuffed animal. It goes beyond even the definition of a stuffed animal. It's perfectly weighted. It has a
perfect
warm
heft is what we like to say.
Scent. It's all, the weight is all in the bum, don't you think?
And the undercarriage.
You hand someone a warmie, they automatically do something with it.
We won't tell you just in case you want to experience it on your own, but organically.
Yes, but there's something biological there when someone touches a warmie. So anyway, let's all you can envision your little parts as these cute, weighted, warm, lavender smelling stuffed animals that just need
I just want to give my parts each a warmie for their birthday.
Really? That's so cute.
Yeah. I just think they need a warmie. It's also interesting how, like, I used to say this to clients because this is what my supervisor said to me when she was teaching me about parts work. you probably already are using parts work without knowing it. Ooh, think colloquially, we're always saying, a part of me feels this way, and then another part of me feels this way. Yep. Obviously, it's a little different, but I do think we could pretty easily identify these parts within us, and I think we already are kind of addressing them. So I hope no one's out there thinking oh God, I have these beings inside of me that I have not addressed. You probably are addressing them and are aware of some of them at least.
Or the concept I feel conflicted. Okay, there are parts inside of you that are in conflicting conversation with each other. We vocalize all this all the time.
Right. Oh, untethered soul.
Oh, yeah. So that was also going to be my next point. Great call. The concept of the self, if that's sounding perhaps a little unfamiliar, there's a lot of overlap too in the way different spiritualities conceptualize self and being. If you've ever done the Headspace app and have done a meditation.
Shout out Harvest Inn.
Yeah. You honestly could be the spokesperson for Harvest Inn. If you've ever done Headspace, you have maybe heard overtures or any sort of meditation, overtures of this calm central core self. But recently I read a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Singer is a yoga and meditation teacher and practitioner. And Untethered Soul is one of his most popular books. It's essentially you reading a stream of consciousness. It's very philosophy. But in that way, it's almost nice. You feel like you're just, all you have to do is let it sink in. Singer talks about the centered self, which is his equivalent of the capital T, capital S. And he's thought of as your highest consciousness. They're the thing that sits in what he calls your seat of calmest self.
I love the
concept of the seat.
His phrasing of that changed how I think about my mind.
Love that.
Entirely.
Really?
The seat. Yeah, keep going.
And the concept that it's the thing behind all the voices inside your head. So when you have your constant monologue, or you, let's say a friend texts you and you forget to text back and you're like, fuck, I'm such a bad friend. My friend's going to leave me forever. That's not you. That's your voice. And we could transfer it into parts work. That's your critic part talking. And yourself is the thing behind it that can hear it.
Yep.
And that is the part, the self, that's in the seat of listening.
Yep.
And the greatest thing you can do to find presence, and what other religions call enlightenment, we could call whatever we want, is to separate yourself from that voice inside your head, to use Singer's paradigm, or if we wanted to use Schwartz's paradigm, to separate out yourself, capital T, capital S, with your other parts.
God.
And talk to them as if they're separate.
I love that. I love that you thought to bring this in too, because I think it does complement it so well. And as you were talking, I was thinking about when I read Untethered Soul, how I was thinking of sitting in that seat, observing all the chaos of my thoughts. And he says something in it. People should really just read the book, because the way he phrases it is so helpful to understanding it fully. But he says something about the act of listening being secondary, which isn't totally true, because I could sing right now and I'm still hearing myself sing. And maybe I'm misquoting that, but he was the fact that you can make your voice in your head yell hello right now,
without
everybody all at once.
3, 2,
3,
1.
2, 1.
I
You just heard hello
head.
in your head, but you weren't the one that yelled it.
Yeah.
And so you're the one that heard it.
Yeah.
So that is your centered self.
Yes.
And I also sometimes think of it as I am the eye of the hurricane. The hurricane is swirling around me, and I can drop in, especially during a meditative state, and experience the stillness in the center. And the stillness is what he really highlights in the book. The chatter of the voices, or hear the parts, is what you're trying to turn the volume down on a little.
Exactly.
You're not trying to turn it off entirely. You're not pretending the voices aren't there. The hurricane is circling around. That's just part of being a human, is having that chatter in your the chatter in your brain.
Yeah, in your mane.
In your mane.
But
horse core.
Don't get me started.
Yeah.
But part of the power of separating out that voice is that you don't have to believe everything those voices say anymore.
Right. They
you don't have
lie,
to believe everything that your critic or your anger or your saboteur is doing.
Yeah.
Or saying.
Which is such a perplexing idea when you first think about it. I remember being oh my God, I'm an unreliable narrator.
I know.
But it's not me, it's my part. My part can be
unreliable.
I feel sometimes my anxious brain thinking about this is I have an enemy within.
Could I ever trust myself? But
Does that make you scared?
No, because I think that's why it's so crucial to recognize that we all have a self.
Good, and they're good natured.
And they're well intentioned.
I just self-soothe.
I just saw all of the panic. Yeah, that's such a good reminder. Let's just get back to the part. There are no bad parts.
No bad parts.
And they're trying to protect us. And I think this is where the non-pathology of internal family systems come in, is that like there isn't anything wrong with any of this. Like this is actually a way in which a healthy brain actually just exists, which could get us to the neuroscience of it all.
Totally. Just before we get into that, you saying no bad parts again triggered in me this, like, my worldview is such that I believe to my core that everyone, given the right circumstances, everyone is good. I believe that everyone is good at their core. What's that called again? It's not
humanism.
Maybe humanism. Yeah, humanistic psychology. Look at you. Oh yeah. Okay, Carl Rogers, who was kind of
really big inspiration, actually.
Oh, really? That was my framework when I was working with clients. I was a relational humanistic, therapist.
And what's the tenet of that?
I'll read it out from Google. Emerging in the mid-20th century as a reaction against the pessimism of psychoanalysis, Freud, and behaviorism, humanistic psychology emphasizes the positive potential of human beings. Rogers argued that people are basically good and, if provided the right environment, specifically unconditional positive regard, we said that was like seared in our brains.
Unconditional positive regard.
Yep. Will naturally move toward becoming more fully functioning and compassionate. We actually often, at least at my practice, would have check-ins and our supervisor would say, are you able to continue to give this client unconditional positive regard?
Wow. Is it like the benefit of the doubt almost in a little bit in a colloquial
way? Yeah. But maybe like even deeper than that. I'm like, I believe you are good sitting across me, and I believe we are working towards you embodying your goodness. I don't know how therapists who don't have that orientation work with clients, because so much is brought into your office that makes you kind of question people's morals, quote unquote, or like ethics. But if you don't have that buoying belief underneath the stories being told to you, like, I don't know what your goal is with therapizing someone.
If you don't believe that they can eventually reach this, to bring it back to IFS, this true self that can bring everything in harmony, what are you working towards, kind of thing? Yeah.
I'm almost like, that's harmful to have them in front of you if you don't believe that they can be good. This is literally calling back on placebo effect. Like your doctor's perspective, their optimism is directly correlated with the likelihood that you will recover.
Or symptom relief.
Yeah, experience symptom relief.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think it would be interesting to see if there was research done around different types of therapeutic models and the outcomes for patients.
Yeah. Okay, now the neuroscience. Basically, how are these parts developed in the first place?
Yeah.
I listened to a woman, Dr. Tori Olds, who has an amazing, very comprehensive video about this. You should actually go listen if you're interested in this stuff on YouTube.
In the show notes.
She said, if you want to put it in terms of computer language, our brains are parallel processors.
Ooh.
So all you computer nerds out there, look at that one. She says most of our psychology for how we experience the world and how we respond to it is based on learning of some kind. It's not the conscious/explicit memory type of learning, like 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
It's the learning that exists in what's called implicit memory.
Ooh.
Yeah, this was a big unlock for me. So with implicit memory, particularly a type she calls procedural memory, we learn how to be, we learn how to do things. It's not like remembering facts. Like I said, it's more like embodied memory. So within.
Like once you learn how to ride a bike, you can always get on a bike and ride a bike.
Well, funny you say that, because she then goes into muscle memory and how, of course, muscle memory isn't stored in our muscles.
Right.
It's just that deeper parts of the brain are able to do such sophisticated calculations really quickly and feed that information to us for immediate use.
Ooh, cool.
She says it's the most obvious in the case of learning physical movements, because we really can feel how it's as if our muscles are remembering what to do and can execute those commands without intervention of our conscious thoughts or logic. So like you said, thinking about riding a bike, you're not thinking consciously about, okay, I put a little bit of pressure on my right foot, and then I guess it's not that minute or acute.
Yep.
So we're doing the same thing, she says, but basically in terms of psychological movements and quote unquote choices.
Psychological movements is such an interesting phrase that I've never considered before, but makes all the sense in the world.
So in the same way you wouldn't be able to, she says, return a tennis ball or ride a bike through logical calculations, you wouldn't be able to be a successful human through just logical calculation either.
Around interpersonal relationship or protecting yourself or growing or...
Yeah. She says we need most of our psychological movements to happen automatically in a manner akin to muscle memory. Wow. We need them to be automatic.
And so essentially in parts development, are you saying this is happening subconsciously, automatically?
Yeah. So we're getting there.
Okay.
You're on the right track. Okay. So the bike riding example, you might sense, she says, like a little vibration that hits you in a specific way that cues you subconsciously to lean almost imperceptibly to the left with a goal of helping you stay upright. So she maps that onto psychology and saying that we're trying to stay upright psychologically as well. And really our brain's main job is to make sure that we survive. So she says upright means well-fed, well-rested, connected to the group because we die without the group, evolutionarily speaking. Then she talks about this in terms of relationships and what IFS is really drawing upon. So if we reach for a cookie for dessert, and we get a shaming look from our mother, we pull back because we need that relationship to be back upright.
Ooh, interesting.
So to speak.
That just reminded me of all the times when I was younger and I'd be hungry after dinner and I'd be told the kitchen is closed.
Really?
And I'd be like, what does that even mean? I'm in the kitchen.
We're like learning as we're young what choices lead to what punishments, outcomes, consequences, etc.
Yeah.
We're learning machines.
Yep.
In almost a muscle memory kind of way, we are learning, don't do that again if we receive a punishment or shame, etc. after an action. Dr. Olds says that the truth is most of our conditioning is around inhibiting ourselves. So like a lot of what we're working to undo in IFS, that's applicable to everyone, is to relearn and recondition the inhibitory behaviors.
So essentially what Dr. Olds is saying is that because we are learning machines and because in order to survive, so much of our learning has to be implicit.
Right.
And this kind of implicit psychological memory.
Yeah. Say implicit, but it's important to note that it's not implicit in the sense that it was always there. It's implicit in the sense that it's now baked into a way that you think that it was always there, but it doesn't have to be. And wasn't.
Right. And it is this kind of subconscious learning that is what these parts develop out of to keep us upright. These parts are there propping us up any which way to just keep us up and down. And then you realize as you get older or you're no longer in those situations that have pushed you cattywampus, but they're still thinking that they need to keep you upright.
Yeah. They're working through memory, not through logic. And that's credit to her. You're looking for a return to homeostasis, that upright middle. And so if you've created, I use this a lot in sessions with my own therapist, we talk about either a family unit being a stool, or we'll talk about my personal homeostasis as a stool. All of these parts learned that they were essential at one point. They were adaptive. Now they're maladaptive. When you remove a leg of a stool, the stool is going to fall. It has been built with all four legs in place, in the case of a stool. And so it makes sense that threatening to remove these parts is destabilizing. And also in clinical work, we learned that it's not appropriate to session 1, try to remove someone's managers. These things are protecting them. It's not a kindness to be like, I'm going to heal you. Here's what you need, and reveal to them all of the things that you observe. Like that is ideally over many months, if not years, of therapeutic work that you help people acknowledge their maladaptive behaviors and thought patterns, but you don't pull their safety blanket out from under them.
That makes so much sense.
Out from on top of them.
Yeah.
She gives a really interesting example about parents who are divorced. So she says, let's say your parents are divorced, and when you'd go to stay with your mom as a child, she was very critical. So your whole body learned to sort of tense up in the house, as if reminding you to walk on eggshells and hold things in. She says maybe she was also threatened by your intelligence and needed to be the one who knew more. So your brain learned that around mom, I should effectively drop 20 IQ points while mom is being critical. And then let's say your dad was very relaxed and unthreatened by you, so you could just be yourself. At his house, your shoulders would relax more. You were standing taller. You just felt different in your body and certainly in your emotions. Maybe your dad actually enjoys your witty humor and you find the playful part of yourself really coming online, she says, and being developed. Now remember, these are learnings. These are learned ways of being, and they aren't learned in order to be forgotten. They're learned in order to be remembered in implicit memory. So you, as the kid with divorced parents, when you go to your mom's house the next time, you're not going to forget how to be. The smell, the sights, the sound of her voice, that will help you, your body, your mind, remember the learning that you had there before. So that part kicks in to try to protect you. And suddenly, when that muscle memory, so to speak, is triggered, it's really a pattern of neural firing. Like your neurons are firing and reminding you of what you learned previously.
Yeah.
So that's what a memory is. It's a pattern, she says, of neural firing. And when that pattern fires, it's really as if you're a different person because you need to be a different person with mom.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And that's because this part that was developed is one in the leading scene now.
Yeah. Dr. Olds says it's not just learning how to be around mom, it's learning about how to be around people who are like mom. Your early learning is able to categorize things for ease. Your brain can't be taking in all new information at once. It creates shorthands for itself. Yeah. So you meet people like mom later when you're an adult or when you're with someone who's critical or whatever, how we described the mom earlier in this anecdote. That part that was activated when you were younger is going to come out to try to protect you.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I like the concept, the imagery of who's in the driver's seat now. And it's like still yourself. It's just a different part of you in the driver's seat. And it's learning how to embody your true self in the driver's seat as much as possible.
It's also important to name, like, in terms of racial discrimination, BIPOC learned this really early. And that's where the term code switching comes in. Code switching is beneficial behavior as someone of color in America, for sure, because you do need to show up differently in certain settings than in others.
So it's societally, culturally,
it's insane.
And interpersonally, we have all these pressures doing this to us. It's so interesting. So did this woman, Dr. Olds, did she work with Schwartz in IFS? Does she talk specifically around parts work?
Yeah. She's talking about Schwartz the whole time.
Oh, wow. So cool. Because it's interesting. Like he actually talks about the fact that his dad was a doctor. And he was like, I was the oldest of 6 sons. My dad really wanted me to be a doctor. I was never good at the science stuff, at the hard science stuff. And obviously he's been monumental in developing this model that is taking over the field of psychology in a really wonderful way. I know I find it as a framework really helpful. And it's interesting that he realized it was working when he was working with his clients. Yeah. And then the science has come, like this understanding of the neuroscience of it is layered on after the fact.
Yeah.
It's so cool to me.
So cool. Checkmate, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah, read that, Mr. Schwartz.
Mr. Mr. Schwartz Sr.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
Mr. Schwartz the First. Who knows? I'm looking at Dr. Tori Old's bio on YouTube. And she says she's a PhD. She lives in Austin, Texas. She says, what I'd really like you to know is that I love learning about the mind. I also love learning how to help others have a more compassionate understanding of themselves.
Yes, which is all Schwartz wants us to do, too.
I know. I think curious-minded folks, explore being human together. We need to reach out to her.
Love. Explore being human together. That's
She's super duper cool to me.
Yeah.
I'm subscribing. She claims that IFS is one of the therapies that works because it changes implicit memory through the process of memory reconsolidation. I think EMDR also is effective due to memory reconsolidation.
And often EMDR and IFS are paired.
Oh,
I know we teased this at the beginning on our first episode, so if you haven't listened, but we talked about how building a home in your mind, you can conceptualize it as the inside out. Inside your head. And I really feel like this episode in particular really kind of is our Inside Out episode.
Inside Out as in the Pixar movie, by the way.
The Pixar movie, yes, thank you. And a lot of trained internal family systems, psychologists, and professionals were super excited once they saw Inside Out. They're like, this is actually
huge for the field.
Literally huge for the field. So that got me to thinking, was the writer and animator Pete Docter,
shout out Piedmont.
No,
he's literally from Piedmont. Same with
way.
Russell from Up, real man. He was Eagle Scouts with my ex-boyfriend.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, okay, so Pete Docter, he wrote Inside Out. He also wrote Up.
Yeah, and Toy Story.
And Toy Story. And he was inspired by a person in Piedmont.
His son's friend was Russell.
Stop.
Literally. And his profile picture is Russell from Up. No. Because it's literally based on it. I don't know what that process was like in terms of...
getting, like, your permission?
Yeah. He was a kid. We were in middle school.
Wait, that's fascinating.
He was maybe in high school.
Was that was that a nice portrayal? Yeah, it was.
It was, yeah. I mean, he seems super naive, I guess.
Yeah, he seems a little...
But sweetie,
lame.
total sweetie.
I was wondering if Pete Docter was inspired by IFS for Inside Out.
Yeah.
He wasn't.
Oh.
He was inspired by his daughter growing up and all of the really strong emotions that happen around adolescence. But I just think it's so cool that in talking and thinking about anthropomorphizing and telling a story about emotions, the model of IFS kind of was brought to life.
Yeah.
I think it kind of goes to show maybe how intuitive IFS is. I read something that if you try to describe IFS to a child, they understand it pretty instantly. I think that's because this concept of our emotions being different elements of ourselves and subpersonalities is intuitive.
Yeah.
And I think it's so wonderful that Inside Out kind of exemplifies that.
Totally. I love that movie. Both of them are great.
Last question for you. If you had to give a color or a adjective or a sense of what you think of when you visualize yourself, what would it be?
Oh.
What your capital T, capital S feels like in your head.
Well, that's yellow.
Yours is yellow.
Mine's yellow. What's yours?
Mine is, I think, orange. And she feels really old in a good way. She feels like kind of... She's old.
Mine is too. They're old. They're on little rocking chairs on a porch.
I like that.
Clinking sweet tea. And we're Southern.
If our true selves are Southern.
Catch you on the flip side.
Love you.
Love you.
Thank you, Phoebe Fry, for this episode's music.
And thank you, Emily Kiernan, for the beautiful cover art.
If you like this episode, please like, share, and leave a comment. And we'll see you next week.